As I follow the development process of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, one of the aspects I watch closest is the evolution of the combat system. And in this video, I'm going to highlight one of the newest improvements to the combat system that you may have missed.
This is Basgrim TV. Learn, blah, level up.
Pretty much since Pantheon gameplay was first revealed on Twitch, we've heard the developers say that they plan on gradually adding layers of complexity to the combat system to make it more dynamic and engaging. And they recently announced one of the newest ways that they're doing that. They didn't really hype it up a lot when they announced it, so I have a feeling it may have actually slipped through the cracks for some people, as it got buried in an hour-long video about shaman abilities. But I think it's important, and I know not everyone has the time to watch those hour-long videos, which is where my channel comes in. I'm completely dedicated to keeping you informed about Pantheon quickly and easily. So if you want more videos like this one, hit the subscribe button now because there's a lot more on the way. And actually, speaking of that ability stream, I recently made a video that summarized how you can upgrade and modify your abilities in Pantheon via the Mastery system, which plays into what we're going to talk about in this video to some degree, and I will provide a link to that if you want to check it out. But now for today's topic. I actually don't know what the official name is for this system. Creative director Christopher Perkins referred to it as state manipulation, but the state manipulation system doesn't exactly roll off the tongue and kind of sounds like another name for the government. So for the purposes of this discussion, I'm just going to call it the advantage system, and you'll see why in a little bit. Although I guess it's really more of a mechanic within the overall combat system that just adds a lot of depth and strategy to how you use your abilities. But I wanted to make a video specifically about this mechanic because I personally think this is one of the cooler things that the devs have introduced recently, and it deserves more discussion. And to understand where this is coming from, let me first give you some context. On the Pantheon website, one of the FAQs about combat is, will there be ability chaining? And the answer is, quote, we're considering it. We don't want to create a detailed combo system, but we like the idea of synergistic abilities and the opportunity for players' abilities to open up possible actions for others. We will reveal more in the future, end quote. Well, folks, the future is now because the advantage system is all about synergy, and I'll let Joppa run us through some examples of how it works.
This is one of the first times that we're talking directly about this concept of state manipulation, if you will. Applying what we would think of as a state of being. You are being buffeted by strong winds. That's the state of being you're in. It's not dealing damage. It's not reducing any kind of statistical situation on the target. It's not altering anything statistically on you. It is simply putting the target into a state of being. And the reason that that's significant is because in that specific state of being, you are going to unlock a myriad of different synergies with your own abilities and with the abilities of other classes. What we've just seen here with the Molten Crown ability is that as you've invested all the mastery points to unlock that third tier, now you have an advantage against the windswept state. And you are able to essentially set yourself up for that combination by applying headwinds and then capitalizing on that with your Molten Crown ability. And essentially what happens is the way that Molten Crown takes advantage of Windswept is it takes all of the damage that it would have done in its dot, and the damage over time it was prepared to do. It front loads that in a new direct damage component that's guaranteed to crit. And so essentially you have a combination here where because there's all these winds blowing around the target, when you introduce flame to a strong oxygenated environment, that flame plumes and explodes and you get this massive, punch of damage. That's an example of an interclass synergy where the shaman is able to set themselves up for a greater type of effect.
I think it's really important that we keep the original game tenets in mind when discussing any mechanic in Pantheon. And in this case, the tenet that applies the most is, quote, a commitment to a style of play that focuses on immersive combat and engaging group mechanics, end quote. You can see how this mechanic fulfills that because it puts the focus on these simple yet realistic interactions, like wind and fire, which keep your attention on the world itself, rather than just trying to get to the next part of an arbitrary combo. And I think that's a key difference between this and a more extended ability chaining system that you see in other games. The longer and more complicated the combos get, the more you have a tendency to turn it into a button mashing fest, where the combat simply revolves around hitting rotations on your UI rather than actually paying attention and reacting to what's going on in the world around you. And I suspect that's why they specifically said in the FAQ that they didn't want to create a detailed combo system. But let's be honest, there's something about nailing combos that's just plain fun. So by boiling it down to abilities that essentially unlock features of other abilities if used together, you can, in theory, get that depth of strategy and satisfaction of comboing without it feeling like a constant game of whack-a-mole. But let's not forget the second part of that tenet, engaging group dynamics. This could play out in a number of different ways, but for one thing, the advantage system isn't just about comboing off your own abilities.
You're also going to see it with cross-class synergy as well. So, for example, one of the ones I love is the Summoner, because the Summoner is able to summon, these rocks and this kind of cloud of debris. And if the target is windswept, if they're in a windswept state, and the Summoner kind of piles this debris onto the target while they're in that state, that debris is going to get accelerated. There's going to be a much harder hit, and you're actually going to essentially stun the target for a period of time. It's going to work as an incapacitate effect. And it's just one of many different combinations and synergies that honestly we are expecting and excited to see players kind of work these things out. There is a level of logic to them. But in some cases, as you can in fantasy games, it's fun to kind of push some of those believable boundaries a little bit. And so there's going to be so many different things to discover in terms of what players are able to do. What's cool even about Headwinds is that not only does Molten Crown, your fire dot line, get an advantage to the windswept state, but as you upgrade Headwinds, you're actually going to be able to get an advantage to the burning state as well, because fire and wind are always kind of pushing each other, amplifying each other along. And so won't go into detail on that, but really exciting to be able to kind of talk about and start showing a little bit of the that kind of synergy.
But wait, there's more, because if we go back to the FAQ, we'll also see that one of the questions is, will there be a limitation to the number of abilities we can use at a given time? And the answer is, quote, you may be limited to a subset of your abilities for the next encounter, causing you to have to intelligently plan ahead and memorize the spells most effective against the upcoming enemy. Likewise, you'll want to memorize spells that counter the upcoming mob's abilities. Lastly, you may have some abilities that work synergistically with others in your group. But the key point here is that these tactical decisions can be made right before the actual encounter. Then, say you move on deeper into the dungeon and are about to confront a different boss with different abilities and a different disposition. It may make tactical sense to prep different abilities. So yes, you are limited to that extent. You cannot simply use any of your 80 plus abilities whenever you wish, because planning for the battle ahead and doing so effectively is key to Pantheon, end quote. The overall philosophy behind the limited action set is kind of a hot topic in the Pantheon community, and it really deserves its own separate video someday. But it's worth addressing as far as it relates to this mechanic of state manipulation, as Jabba calls it. Because as you heard, the answer specifically mentions that you'll have abilities that work synergistically with others in your group, and that's part of what you'll want to take into consideration when deciding what abilities to bring to a fight.
One of the things when we talk about, the strategy behind limited action set is that there's a period of considering what it is that you need available to you, what it is that you are kind of going into battle with. But it's not just what can my abilities do. Do I have a root? Do I have a stun? Do I have a snare? Do I have an interrupt? Do I have a silence? Do I have all of the keys of my arsenal? But it's learning the game. It's understanding, like, if I don't have a root readily available, what abilities do I have that can synergize with either other abilities that I have to create those effects, or how can I synergize with this other class in my group? I'm a shaman. I know there's a summoner in my group. I know we have a way to cover the ability to stun, to interrupt, through the combination of these abilities. And we're really excited just to see the depth that brings to a different way of thinking about combat, approaching different combat situations, and maybe more importantly than anything else, the ways that players are able to respond to unforeseen events by kind of digging deep into secondary and tertiary effects of their abilities when combined in unique ways.
So what do you think about this mechanic? Does it sound fun to you? And what other sorts of interactions between abilities can you think of? Voice your opinion in the comments section below. I do read each and every comment. And I will see you in the next video.